are recording and we are live. So I think there's not much else we can do. At this point, we have done all of the things. So we will start. I am Jennifer and I run Coastal Magic Convention, and we are going to have a chat tonight about villains, because we just love villains, even though I can't imagine why we should. So that's what our conversation is going to be about. I have with us three of our 2021 Coastal Magic featured authors. We have Tawdra Kandle and Kiernan Kelly and Layla Reyne, and they will all take a second to just give us a very brief introduction. And then we will have some questions about villains, and the good, the bad, and the otherwise. All right, so why don't we start? We'll start, and I don't know how you guys are arranged on the screen for you, but I have Tawdra up top, so we'll start with Tawdra and work our way around.
Well, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm Tawdra Kandle. I write romance, and I have been a Coastal Magic author for so long that Jennifer, I'm just kind of a fixture now. So no, it's my favorite, absolute favorite con, and I tell her that she's going to have to wheel me out when I'm ancient. So I'm thrilled to be here and happy to be here with everybody else, and can't imagine a better place to spend a Thursday night in October.
Woohoo! Kiernan?
Woo! I'm Kiernan Kelly. I am very happy to be here. I'm excited to be part of this absolutely brand new type of Coastal Magic. It's exciting. I've been a part of Coastal Magic since the very first one, when it was Old City New Blood.
Old City New Blood. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Parrot Hotel.
At the Parrot Hotel.
Yes. And I've gone to every one since, and I have absolutely adored it, and everyone connected with it.
Yay! All right, Miss Layla.
Hi, I'm Layla Reyne. This is my first Coastal Magic, actually. Yay! So
welcome, a newbie.
Welcome to our crazy.
I'm excited. Jay's been talking in my ear for years, and finally everything worked out. So we're excited about that. I write queer romance and queer romantic suspense, and I'm super excited. Villains are one of my favorite things, and I can't help making them good guys later. So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
That will be part of my questions.
Okay.
So my first question is, we'll start with Layla and then kind of go in reverse order. What is your definition of a villain? Like, to you, when you sit down to write a villain, what are you going to be doing? What's your definition?
To me, it's the conflict that's in the way of the protagonist. Okay. And our two characters, our two leads. So, you know, there is the stereotypical bad guy villain, which we see a lot in romantic suspense, right? So Renault, you know, who in Fog City, I'm not going to spoil it in case anyone's not read it. And then you also have villains that are more not necessarily a person. So in Dine With Me, one of the characters has cancer. And so that's kind of the source of conflict and the villain, so to speak, that the characters are up against. So it can range widely. And then when you talk about PNR, which Kiernan and Tawdra will talk about too, it's that it can be, you know, monsters and all that kind of stuff. So.
Kiernan?
I was
That's okay. I'll direct traffic. I got no problem with that.
I love a good villain. I write mostly gay romance, but I also write horror. So I love a really evil, awful villain who can do really terrible things, because things that I can't let my protagonist do, but I really want to. So yeah, and I also love villains who have a good backstory, who maybe have reasons why they've turned out the way they have, but it still makes no difference because they're still absolutely awful. Still want to see them die horribly, which they usually do. So that's my take on villains.
Gotcha. Tawdra?
I also, I agree with Layla that the villain is the one who is opposite of the hero and the heroine, the protagonist. The villain is the person, the situation, the conflict that messes everything up, that threatens that. I write romance, so it threatens that HEA or that HFN.
Right.
And so sometimes, strangely enough, even the lead can be a villain, a part of it, because a lot of times in my books, it's something within the man or the woman, or the woman and the woman, or the man and the man, or whoever is involved, who are that's standing in the way of their happily ever after. They're right off into the sunset.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the characters can be their worst own enemy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
A lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of people have seen the series. I don't know if you read the books, the Dexter books. And I found that they did it really well. They took a villain. I mean, the guy is a serial killer, and they made him so sympathetic that people were rooting for him. To me, that was magic.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question, is actually not counting your own stories. Who are some of your favorite villains? Like who are some of the villains that intrigue you or interest you, or just have managed to gain your rooting for them? And this can be anybody. I'm not going on order. Yeah, Dexter. Okay. Anybody else?
I've been on a Buffy kick, so I'm going to go with anything that Joss writes. Spike was an amazing villain. The first, for the last season, the first was a wonderful, deeply psychological villain. Willow was an awfully great villain too.
She stepped into that with all her feet.
Moriarty from Sherlock, from Sherlock Holmes, some of my favorites. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else who jumps into my. I think those are my favorites.
Yeah. Layla, you got any favorites?
I think along. Go ahead, Kiernan.
No, go ahead.
Along the same lines of Tawdra, I came up in Vampire Diaries land, so Damon, right? So started out as. So I don't know that he was ever supposed to be the villain. Like if you get inside of Julie Bleck's head, but where that arc went with him, and then you also saw. I liked Catherine. I thought she was fantastic. So much better than Elena, actually. And so,
see, I never watched Vampire Diaries, so I always thought whenever I saw him, I always thought was he not one of the, I guess not one of the heroes of the story then?
He was the romantic foil to start. And
interesting,
then
okay.
I don't know what the trajectory was supposed to be, but that definitely was where the chemistry was, and that's where the audience largely went. And so they went that way. And then I love villains and this kind of comes through myself. I love villains that you don't know are the villains. Usual Suspects is my favorite movie. And Kaiser Soze is just, Kevin Spacey notwithstanding, but like the story of it, right? And the fact of what you know and don't know and the little pieces you get, like I want to be surprised.
Right.
And so that's my favorite. If you can fool me as to who the villain is, I am the happiest clam in the world.
I see. I think if it were me, I just want to know ahead of time. I don't want to be surprised by something. I want to know exactly, this is a person I cannot trust. And then that way I can stay away from them. Focus on
if I can't figure it out,
that's
what I want.
I grew up reading Stephen King, and I adore Stephen King. One of my favorite villains is Carrie, because she starts out in the book as such a sympathetic character. She's somebody that a lot of us could relate to because she was so bullied. She wasn't very, in the book, she is not very pretty. She's got acne and she's overweight, and we can all, a lot of us can relate to that. And then she finds her power and she literally burns everything to the ground.
Right.
And she becomes the villain. I mean, she was killing people left and right with no remorse,
Right.
And really enjoyed that arc. That was different for me to see somebody that started out so sympathetic and then become this horrible villain,
See, for
right?
me,
And
I
become
think
sympathetic again at the
I,
end.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think Carrie is I don't see her I would never have called her a villain. So that's very interesting. I would have called the people who bullied her the villains to the end, and I'm glad they got what they got
Well, yeah,
because
definitely,
you know,
definitely. But what I'm
but
saying is that usually a villain, by definition, is somebody who's going to uh, commit atrocities, sort of, uh, without being curtailed by the structure of society. What we
Yeah.
okay.
keep us from doing. Our sense of empathy and our sense of right and wrong. And this, is somebody who, like, for example, Carrie has just been pushed too far
Mhm.
and commits all these. And because she has this power, she's able to take everybody down.
Mhm.
But I can understand what you're saying, because by the same token, yeah, I'm rooting. It's a villain I'm rooting for.
Right?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
get him because he took a
So,
whole, But a lot of innocent people died too, who weren't awful to her.
well,
So
true. So is that a hero? Sorry, Jennifer, a villain or
no,
an
you're good.
anti-hero? Because I'm
I don't know,
thinking
but
Stephen King does really a good job with that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
no, I was
Well,
just going to
and I
say I
think,
have this whole list of questions that I was going to ask you guys, but we're going to ask them in all the wrong order now because you guys keep talking about things that are on my questions. So we're going to completely eliminate the order of questions, and I'm just going to ask you now. In that case, is there a point where the hero of the story can where do you draw the line? Because there's a lot of times when you see people that are put in situations where they have to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So where do you draw the line when the hero of the story starts to do things that turns them into what you would consider to be a villain character? Is there a place where that happens, or does the end always justify the means?
I think that's a big part of it. I think when you're talking about your protagonist and your hero, the end has to justify the means. You can do, pretty horrible things, providing there is a reason that he absolutely has to do these things. There's no other choice for him.
Mm-hmm.
If there's another choice and he doesn't take it, that can make readers, I think, take a step back and say, you're not the guy I thought you were. That's maybe not such a good thing. So when you're talking about your hero, not necessarily the villains, but the hero, I think the end needs to justify the means.
Right.
yeah, and I think they have to have some sort of, self-imposed rules. Like, I mean, when I think about, Fog City, and it's about assassins,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they have a code. At least this generation, Hawes, who's the protagonist for that series, they have this code: no collateral damage, no indiscriminate killing, no unvetted targets. And
Mhm.
so that's his way of trying to stop from going too far, because you've seen it go too far, and
Right.
being, turning into what he doesn't want to be. And interesting, that series I had fun because, the law enforcement person ends up joining with them in the end, because there was more flexibility to go after, and they go after the bad
Right.
guy, so to speak. And
Mhm.
so, that was a flip. But there is that point, because I think with some villains, like when you think about Walter White and Breaking Bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it is a perfect character arc from start to finish of the good guy gone bad. And, I think it's Jesse and the girlfriend. Like, that was for me the tipping point. I'm like, okay, you're the villain now. We're good, right? And so, there is that tipping point, and where they can't be redeemable, and if you can pull it back.
Right.
Yeah. That's the key. If they cannot be redeemed, if they have no remorse at all,
Mhm.
if there's no ramifications, no feeling of guilt, then I think that then they've kind of gone beyond
Yep.
beyond redemption at that point. And yeah, and I've done, but I subscribe to the Joss Whedon school of, as I've said, of villainry. I think there's very few villains who you don't turn around and end up making them heroes, or very conflicted characters. people are not black and white, or at least I've never met people who are completely one way or the other. So I think those nuances are important.
And the black and white characters aren't generally the most. I mean, some of it's fun and great, but like those aren't as interesting, right? As like the villain that has that backstory that you can dig into, that you understand why they're doing their stuff, why they're taking those actions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so in the next step of throwing the question order out the window, we'll go the opposite of that. Is there a point? What do you build into your villains that will allow you to later then give them a chance to be redeemed in the eyes of the readers? Like how far can you take them to make them a really good villain before getting to the point where they're not redeemable and the readers wouldn't buy that they would be coming back from that? Like, how do you balance that to make them a really good bad guy, but then still be able to pull them back and change it around, if that's your plan for them? Obviously, there's some villains that are just going to end up dead at the end of the series, but if your plan is to redeem them, how do you get them to be super, super believable as the bad guy, but then still give them enough that you can bring them back from that? Layla's nodding. What do you have a thought?
Yes. I've been doing that, but I've got the fortune that I write continuation series.
Mm-hmm.
And big universes. So I've had, time to roll it out. But there was a villain in the Trouble Brewing series, Becca, who, as she was the villain in kind of in book one, and then as we went through the series, she is helping out our protagonist little by little, right? She has a role, and so you're going to see her later in another series where we're going to redeem her. Same series, Amelia, who is in Fog City, who does some pretty terrible stuff in the first book, but then by the last book of the series actually kind of closes the door on something that should make people happy, but it also, they have to come back and help the protagonist, I think, and be, show remorse, be helpful, and give the reader something to relate with them, to catch on with them, that makes them want to come back and see that redemption story.
Gotcha.
I think it all depends too on the type of villain that you're writing. Because if you're writing like a psychopath, Hannibal the Cannibal. Okay, Hannibal Lecter, one of my favorite villains of all time, has almost no redeeming character, none. He is just a big ball of evil, and he's helping. He's helping solve with Buffalo Bill mystery and all that. Sure, he's helping, not enough to excuse the fact that he ate someone's face. So I think it all depends on the kind of character. I forget who wrote Silence of the Lambs. Thomas
Harris.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did a phenomenal job writing a character that's literally
awful.
That's just so awful that
he's genuinely a horrible person. Yeah.
So interesting enough for you to want to continue reading about it.
Right.
So I think it did a super job with that. So like I said, I think it depends on the kind of villain that you're writing, whether or not he's going to have redeeming characteristics or not.
Gotcha.
I think because I tend to not write suspense, horror, anything like that. Point of view is really, really important. There was one series, I have a lot of series out, and I think that there's only been 2 villains who I have not redeemed. And one, my reader said, there's no way you're going to. And I didn't intend to. It was supposed to be one book, and he was supposed to be the bad guy. And then something happened at the end of the story, and it just pointed. There was just no doubt that this was what was going to happen. So he actually ended up being one of the most popular male love interests in all of my books, just because he was redeemable. He was
Mhm.
he was flawed, and we found out when we weren't looking at it. The first book was from the point of view of his ex-girlfriend, and the subsequent books were dual point of view from the other people in the, and you got to understand why things happened. And I think
Right,
that sheds a
Yeah.
big light. I think point of view is a huge thing.
right, because the
Yeah.
villains
Well,
always
and
think that they're the good
Yeah.
guys.
Right.
yeah,
Well,
I
not
mean, and
always,
it can
but many
just,
times.
it can just, particularly with romance, it can just be some information you didn't have the first
Right.
time, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you think Nick and Aiden are hooking up in Irish Whiskey, but no, they never actually went that far. And
Mhm.
Aiden, the protagonist, was the one that didn't tell him. So it wasn't that Nick was the one being a dick, it was Aiden,
Right.
right? So it was actually the protagonist. And so, just that little bit of information
Mm-hmm.
can flip it. And that's to Tawdra's point
Absolutely.
about point of view, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you
Yeah.
ever written a character that you absolutely 100% did not plan on ever giving any redeeming qualities? And how did that work out? Did it stick that way, or did it end up, the story end up going sideways on you? Because it sounds
I
like
mean,
Tawdra had one that
I
ended up
did.
changing.
Yeah.
So,
I
so
had
do you
one.
have do you have villains in your story that you started out, this guy's going to be the bad guy, or this girl, or this monster, or whatever, this is going to be the bad guy, and it stayed that way, or do they tend to work themselves out?
In my very first series, the young adult paranormal, the one who was really, she was the villain of the first book, and she came out of a coma after being in a mental hospital. And she's actually okay now, and she's actually a force for good. She ended up having it just worked out that way. But again, she had a lot of redemption.
Right.
And there were backstories, and there were choices that she made. And the other thing that is cool about writing younger characters, when you're writing YA, you have a lot of room
Oh yeah.
for redemption,
Mhm.
because people who are teenagers, and this is not to point the finger at anybody, but people are teenagers, make rotten decisions all the
Oh, yeah.
time. And
Right.
so
It's a learning process. Yeah.
exactly, so it's did she, yeah, she was going to sacrifice this girl Tasman out in the forest and whatever, and try to take her power, and it would kill her, but she was only 17 years old. You can't blame her, right? No, I mean,
Yeah.
she had a troubled upbringing, and so
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, similar to what something Kiernan said, the serial killers, they didn't get redeemed, right? The couple that I've written, they're not coming back from that. And then the big villain of Fog City, nope, that's pathologically not
So
possible.
that's where
That
where the
character.
line is.
Like,
Then serial
yeah,
killers is a line. Pathological psychos, that's a line.
yeah.
yeah.
Because that's what
I
I'm
mean, I
curious
think
about. How far can you take it and before you realize, okay, I'm not coming back from this?
in those cases for me, I planned it. Like there was
Yeah.
never any. I mean, they were the big bad,
Yeah.
And it was
right?
going to stay that way.
And
Yeah.
it was going to stay that way.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
Cool. So why do you think people like the villains so much? What do you think is the draw to? Because if you ask any avid reader, name me a list of your top 5 villains, they can all do it just like that. So why do you think that's a thing? Why do you think people are drawn to those kinds of characters?
They're the bad boys.
Well, yeah, but why? But why does that
The
appeal to
bad
us?
boys.
Why do we like that?
The danger, I think, the stepping outside of what society allows, and hopping on the back of a Harley with a guy in leather. It's dangerous, and it's exciting, and you can do it safely in a book,
Right.
whereas you probably can't just jump on some random guy's Harley in real life and expect not to get severe road rash. So
Yeah.
I think that's got a lot to do with it. It's the excitement and the danger of being with the bad boy.
Mm-hmm.
and particularly if it's the bad boy with the heart of gold.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Like that's just like That's the trope.
That
And
like gives me
so,
goosebumps right now. Just
yeah.
think like nobody specific, just that generalized description there just gave me goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the contrast too. I think villains allowed the heroes and the the good guys to look even better.
Ah, that's true.
Yeah, and sometimes
Yep.
sometimes villains are unexpected. And in my sports romance, somebody who I thought was going to be the other hero, oh my gosh, readers hated him. Not everybody, but they are like, my readers will still be like, I was so glad that this happened to him, and I will never forgive him. I have had readers say to me, I will never forgive him for what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that's a different flip side of villainry.
Right.
I did not attend it. Again, so it was romance, but so I think that I love that idea of the bad boy with a heart of gold. I guess I wouldn't call that a villain so much, but I think that is why it's
Right.
an appeal, and I think
I
it's a
think
good
they're the book
contrast.
1 villain, then they're the book
That's
3
right. That's
hero.
true. That's
Right? Yeah.
absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's exactly what they are. They move, they morph.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what about seeing the story? Because most stories that I've read, anytime we're obviously seeing the story from the view of the protagonist. That's how the story gets told. You rarely get to be inside the head of the villain character, the antagonist. Is that a conscious decision that you make, or would you like to tell the story? Would you like to give that perspective in the stories a little more? Do you think that would be helpful to telling the story, or does it give them more of that villain characteristic if you don't know what's going on with them?
I wrote. I have a book that's with my agent right now, and in it, the villain is awful, and he's a serial killer. So we know it right from the beginning. He's awful.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I structured the book, every few chapters, there's a chapter in the villain's point of view. He's writing in a diary.
Gotcha.
That's like his manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you an idea of what he's thinking and why he's doing what he's doing, even though it doesn't make a lot of what makes sense to anybody with, who's normal.
Right.
For him, it makes sense that this is the reason I'm doing this. So I was happy to be able to put that in the book to give readers an idea of what he's thinking and what his
Mm-hmm.
motives are.
Gotcha.
And not just that he's this angry man, I'm going to kill everybody,
So my question is that
writing in just the protagonist's point of view.
Right. Is that an attempt to show a redeeming potential redeeming quality, or just to reinforce the psycho?
Just to explain the psycho.
Ah, gotcha.
Explain his.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting to think about what he was thinking about.
Right.
While he was doing this.
Cool.
Kiernan, is that a romance or is that a different genre? Because I know you see the villain more in mystery and horror, right?
It's a thriller with romantic elements, is how I would describe it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why we don't see it much in romance. It's just not. It's
Right.
not the typical. It's you just
Right.
have either the one hero or the two
Right.
main characters.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right.
Nora Roberts and J.D. As both herself and J.D. Robb do it, which is, I think it's helpful, even if they're, and it can be both redemptive, like showing,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're going, oh, this is why they're doing it. And it can just be
Right.
like, wow, it can actually, I think, amp up the horror too. Where you're like,
I think so
wow.
too. On the very few occasions that I've seen it happen, that I've read a book where it's had the villain's point of view, it's almost always reinforced that they are out of their ever-loving minds, so.
Yeah. And it would be hard
Go
to
ahead,
write
Tom.
it as because nobody's the villain in their own story. You know, if you're
Right.
telling the
Right.
story, my kids had a book growing up, the true story of the Three Little Pigs, which was told from the wolf's point of view. And from the wolf's point of view,
Interesting.
right? He was just like, no, I just was happened to be walking along and I stumbled into this house and, he just happened to chase after pigs. It was a total misunderstanding, So, these things happen.
Yeah.
But I think that is the case. I mean,
Layla?
we've seen that in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were going to say something about that, Layla?
Oh, it's mood, right? Like I do think it really is just it's I think setting the mood, like particularly if you want a story that's more darker, that's noir, anything, that's the horror genre, that it just really, I do think, reinforces that the mood and sets
Right.
the darkness.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
Gotcha. Okay, that was probably the quickest 30 minutes I have had in a very long time. This was fun. I think I should rethink this. Maybe I should set these up for an hour because 30 minutes just doesn't seem like enough time to talk to you guys. Okay, so since we planned for 30 minutes, I will let you all go. But I want to give you all a chance to let everybody know what you've got coming up. Coastal Magic proper is going to be in February. So if you have new releases coming out between now and February, if you've got any other events that you're going to be doing, any other virtual things that people can find you doing, if you've got anything else coming up that you want to let people know about, we'll kind of work our way around. Does anybody have anything they want to share about what they've got coming up between now and February? We'll start at Tawdra and we'll go back around again.
Okay. I have I have not written paranormal in 3 years, and I have a paranormal anthology coming out in January called New Year, New Boo,
Cool.
which is total fun and just a total romp, but it's a new segue into my paranormal world, and it's going to be a shifter slayer, and I have that, and I have a Christmas story coming out at the beginning of November.
Cool.
So.
Tawdra? Kiernan?
Me. I just had a new release come out. I'd say over a week ago. It's the start of a new series that are going to be 2 novellas in 1 book, in each book of the series, and they are it's Greek myth that it's based on.
Oh, cool.
Very cool.
The first one was actually released earlier on in my career, and it was called For Love of War, and it's the story of Ares. And
Cool.
And then the second novella in that book is brand new. It's called Sticks and Stones, and it's Hermes and Thanatos,
Oh, cool.
the god of death.
Cool.
Very cool.
So that just came out. And I have another book that's coming out. I'm actually re-releasing a series of 3 stories in a book called Archangels Unleashed. And it's there are 3 stories in there involving that take place all in the same universe. There's Dancing on the Head of a Pin, which is about a demon and an angel. Then there's Healing Hands, which is about the Archangel Gabriel. And then there's Hell Takes a Holiday, which is Lucifer and Uriel, Angel Uriel.
You have lots of things going on.
So, yeah.
Kiernan has all of the books coming out.
All of the things.
Very cool. Layla?
Yeah, so 2020 kind of got away from me due to COVID and jobs. And so things got a little delayed. I'm giving myself a treat and writing Nick and Cam's wedding short, which is way overdue.
Very cool.
So that'll be the next thing out. That'll be a freebie for readers. And then I've got 2 secret projects I can't talk about. And books 4 and 5 in Fog City. So Helena's book, which is an FF romantic suspense. And then that's called Queen's Ransom.
Cool.
And Holt's book, which is Holt and Kane, everybody wants, and it's Silent Night. And so, and that'll tie off that series and launch the redemption one I talked about.
Nice.
So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Has anybody else got any other virtual things coming up between now and February? Any other talks or chats or events, anything? No?
I don't think so.
Just the ones that I'm doing for Coastal.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we've got reading challenge things coming up, and we've got all kinds of fun stuff.
Tomorrow night
have-
we're talking Midnight Sun too.
That's
Violet and I
true.
are doing Midnight Sun
Okay.
tomorrow night. So
That is true. That is
which
true.
is another flip on the whole villain
I
thing.
will.
You know?
I will be chatting with you about that tomorrow night.
Yay!
All right, ladies. Well, I definitely appreciate you taking some time to come and chat with me. And like I said, this 30-minute thing is for the birds. That is not not even remotely enough time to chat. But I will let you go for this evening. And I thank you for taking some time to chat. And we will see you again soon, another time.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Everybody. Nice seeing everybody.
Nice seeing everybody too. Kiernan, I love your
Thanks.
hat.
Thank you.